The legend of Thor's hammer, Mjölnir. In the realm of Asgard, high above the mortal world of Midgard, there existed a weapon of extraordinary might, a hammer named Mjölnir. It was wielded by Thor, the god of thunder, protector of gods and mortals alike. Forged in the fires of creation, Mjölnir's story was one of power, mischief, and heroism. The origin of Mjölnir began with Loki, the trickster god. Mischievous and cunning, Loki had a knack for causing trouble, and one day, his antics led to disaster. In a fit of mischief, he cut off the golden hair of Sif. When Thor discovered what Loki had done, his fury was unparalleled. Loki, fearing Thor's wrath, swore to make amends. He promised to replace Sif's hair with something even more magnificent. To fulfill his promise, Loki journeyed to Svartalfheim, the land of the dwarves, home to the most skilled craftsmen in the 9 realms. There, Loki approached 2 sets of dwarven brothers. The first, Sindri and Brokkr, were known for their unparalleled skill in forging magical items. Loki challenged them to create treasures for the gods, wagering his head that their creations would be unmatched. Eager to prove themselves, the brothers set to work. Sindri and Brokkr forged 3 magnificent treasures. A golden headpiece for Sif, crafted to flow like living sunlight and grow like natural hair. Gungnir, a spear for Odin that would never miss its mark. Mjölnir, a hammer that could level mountains, summon thunder, and always return to its wielder. However, during the forging of Mjölnir, Loki, shapeshifted into a fly, bit Brokkr to distract him. The result was a slight flaw. Mjölnir's handle was shorter than intended. Despite this imperfection, the hammer was a masterpiece, unmatched in power. When Loki returned to Asgard with the treasures, the gods marveled at their beauty. Thor was especially taken with Mjölnir and claimed it as his own. From that day forward, the hammer became a symbol of Thor's strength and his role as the protector of gods and mortals. As Thor wielded Mjölnir to defend Asgard and Midgard, its legend grew. However, even the mightiest weapon was not immune to treachery. One morning, Thor awoke to find Mjölnir missing. The loss was devastating, and the god's rage shook the halls of Asgard. Suspecting foul play, Thor sought the help of Loki to recover his hammer. Loki, ever resourceful, borrowed Freya's falcon feather cloak, which allowed him to fly between realms. His search led him to Jotunheim, the land of the giants, where he confronted Thrym, the king of the Jotun. Thrym admitted to stealing Mjölnir and made his demand clear. He would return the hammer only if Freya, the goddess of beauty, became his bride. Loki returned to Asgard with the grim news, and the gods gathered to discuss their next move. Freya, furious at the suggestion, refused outright. "Do you think I would debase myself by marrying a giant?" she exclaimed. The gods were at an impasse, until Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, proposed a bold plan. "Let Thor disguise himself as Freya and travel to Jotunheim," he suggested. Thor was horrified. "I will not dress as a bride," he bellowed. But with no other options, he begrudgingly agreed. The halls of Asgard were heavy with tension as the gods debated their next move. Freya's refusal to marry the giant Thrym left them without a clear solution, and the loss of Mjölnir left Asgard vulnerable to attack. "Without Mjölnir, we are defenseless," Thor growled. His frustration was evident, and his hands itched for his hammer, the weapon that had never failed him. "We must outwit Thrym," Heimdall said, his piercing gaze sweeping the room. "If Freya will not go, then Thor must take her place." Thor's eyes widened, his voice booming like thunder. "Me? You want me to dress as a bride? This is madness." "Madness, perhaps," Loki interjected with a sly grin, "but necessary. Thrym will not suspect a warrior disguised as a woman. And besides," he added with a smirk, "you do have the figure for it." Thor glared at Loki, but the other gods nodded in agreement. With no better plan, Thor reluctantly consented. The gods wasted no time. Freya herself provided her finest bridal gown, a masterpiece of silken fabric adorned with jewels that shimmered like starlight. Gold necklaces and arm rings were fastened around Thor's burly frame, and a heavy veil was placed over his head to conceal his face and beard. "You're enjoying this far too much," Thor muttered as Freya adjusted his attire. "Enjoying it? Hardly," Freya replied with a smirk. "But if you want your precious hammer back, you'll have to play the part." Loki, meanwhile, dressed as a handmaiden to accompany the bride. He seemed to revel in the charade, his quick wit already crafting responses to any potential suspicions from Thrym. Thor looked at his reflection, his muscular form barely contained by the delicate gown. "If anyone speaks of this after today," he growled, "I will use Mjölnir to silence them." Loki only laughed. "Oh, Thor, it's not every day the mighty god of thunder becomes a blushing bride. This will be a tale for the ages." The journey to Thrym's hall was long and fraught with tension. As they approached, Loki reassured Thor, "Remember, speak as little as possible. Leave the talking to me." The giants greeted their arrival with cheers. Thrym himself stood at the entrance, his massive frame towering over everyone. His eyes lit up at the sight of his bride. "Ah, Freyja, you are more beautiful than I ever imagined!" Thrym exclaimed, his voice echoing through the valley. He extended a hand, but Thor, conscious of his strength, merely bowed his head in response. Loki, ever the diplomat, stepped forward. "The Lady Freya is overcome with joy to finally meet you, Thrym. She has traveled far and is eager for the feast." Thrym's smile widened. "Then let us begin. Tonight, we celebrate a union that will bring peace between giants and gods." The feast was a grand affair, with tables laden with roasted meats, fresh bread, and overflowing horns of mead. Thor, who had not eaten all day, found his hunger nearly impossible to contain. Loki, noticing Thor's impatience, whispered, "Remember, brides don't eat like warriors. Restrain yourself." But Thor could not resist. He tore into the food with abandon, devouring an entire ox in minutes, followed by 8 salmon and 3 barrels of mead. The giants stared in shock. Thrym leaned over to Loki, whispering, "Why does Freya eat so much? I have never seen a woman consume such quantities." Loki, ever quick on his feet, replied smoothly, "Ah, my lord, you do not know the depth of her devotion. She has not eaten in 8 days, so eager was she to join you." Thrym nodded, clearly pleased with the explanation. Such passion. Truly, she is a remarkable woman. Meanwhile, Thor continued to eat, his hunger unabated. Loki nudged him under the table. "Control yourself or you'll ruin everything." When the feast ended, Thrym clapped his hands. "Bring forth Mjölnir to sanctify this union," he commanded. "Place it in my bride's lap, as is our custom." Thor's heart raced as he saw his beloved hammer being carried into the hall. Its presence was a reminder of his true purpose, and he tensed in anticipation. The hammer was placed in Thor's lap, and for a moment, all eyes were on the bride. Loki, sensing Thor's barely contained fury, leaned in and whispered, "Not yet. Wait for the right moment." Thrym stepped forward, beaming. "With this union, I will have the most beautiful bride and the most powerful weapon. Together, we shall rule the realms." Thor could wait no longer. With a roar that shook the hall, he ripped off the veil, revealing his true identity. The giants gasped in shock, and Thrym's face twisted in confusion and fear. "Did you think you could steal from the gods and go unpunished?" Thor bellowed. Seizing Mjölnir, Thor unleashed his fury. Lightning crackled through the air as he swung the hammer, striking down Thrym and his warriors. The giants, unprepared for the sudden attack, scrambled to flee, but none could escape Thor's wrath. The once celebratory hall was reduced to rubble, and when the dust settled, only Thor and Loki remained standing. Loki, brushing off debris, looked at Thor and said with a grin, "I'd say that went rather well." Thor glared at him, but couldn't suppress a smirk. "If you ever remind me of this day, Loki, I'll strike you next." With Mjölnir reclaimed, the two returned to Asgard, their mission accomplished. The gods welcomed them back with cheers, and Thor, despite the indignity of the disguise, took pride in his victory. The story of Thor's wedding deception became one of the most celebrated tales in Asgard, a testament to Thor's bravery and the lengths he would go to protect his hammer. Though he endured mockery from Loki for years to come, Thor's triumph ensured the safety of the gods and cemented his reputation as the mightiest of warriors.